hate to burst your bubble, but,
You are gay.
Oh yeah, we're back, baby. Talking about the problems with Yugioh Girls again. And this time we're talking about the second generation of Yu-Gi-Oh! Yugioh GX. I know that I talked about at length of the mistakes of Yugioh GX in a video that I'm surprised did as well as it did, but like with the last video where I talked about the female characters in the original Yu-Gi-Oh!, this will be a more focused video on the topic. But before we begin, I feel like I need to bring up something that caused some concern on my end. Namely, how a few people thought that I was a feminist and trying to cancel the creator of Yu-Gi-Oh!
Did I just hear someone use a microaggression?
No! Yeah, no joke, I had some dumbasses actually accuse me of that. Because, yeah, making a joke at feminist frequency's expense apparently means I'm a total feminist. Nowhere in my video did I state I wanted to cancel Kazuki Takahashi. Even if I did, the guy's probably got enough fuck you money not to give a rat's ass about what some measly YouTuber has to say in the West. Plus, Japan doesn't really seem to care in general what Americans think of their products, especially if they're decades old at this point. So, for the people who apparently lost their frontal lobe, I'm merely talking about the female characters because while I do like Yu-Gi-Oh!, it has problems when it comes to its writing. This isn't me saying that I want to cancel the series, or that I think that the writing is offensive. I'm just a dude on the net who likes anime girls and likes talking about characters in general, and who talks about nerd shit. Don't read too much into it. So, get your game...
I'm what is known as a YouTube hobo. I provide no measurable value to society.
And he do wee woo wee woo.
Blow it out your ass.
he's a lot of booty.
I beg your pardon.
Shock of all shocks, before we get to the actual named characters of GX, I do want to point out something that's always bugged me about the series, and that's most of the female background characters are all in Obelisk Blue's dorm. For those unaware, Obelisk Blue is known as the best of the best out of 3 dorms. Aside from the 2 female characters in the first episode wearing what appears to be raw yellow uniforms, we never see any of the girls wearing other than blue. With the sole exception of Rei, but that's a special case. Don't get me wrong, I love blue miniskirts as much as the next guy, but from a writing perspective, it's utterly baffling. Why does every girl on the island get stuck in Obelisk Blue? You know, the best dorm and the highest level you can have in Duel Academy? What kind of message are you trying to say, Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, that if you're a girl you get a free ride to the top of the food chain?
Yes.
Not to sound like one of those losers that complains about women, but this always bugged me that we never saw any of the other girls in red or yellow, because I don't know about you, but I like to think that varying skills would be appropriate. Apparently though, and this is from the official wiki page, the reason for this is because the lower 2 dorms do not have the appropriate housing, as Obelisk Blue is the only one with a separate dormitory for both female and male students. Which, fair enough I suppose. I still question why raw yellow doesn't, because there's a big building that can be cut in 2. I've been in dorms before, but I suppose when you've got an island full of teenagers, the possibility of hormones acting up would make this a dangerous game to play. But it really makes me question where all the funds Duel Academy is getting are going to. And while there is a reason for this, it creates another issue. If you watched my video on Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, you'd know that I messed with my editor's editing. That was actually pretty good. Sorry, Kaiser.
Fuck you! You disgusting little pig! You make me sick!
You can't show a person being killed, especially in a show that's being shown to kids. Although, I don't know, maybe put like a Dragon Ball Z clip here.
Oh my god!
You can't show a person being killed, especially in a show that's being shown to kids. Although...
Aster, help us! It's me, Daddy! Father!
Yup, that's him alright.
I don't know, maybe put like a Dragon Ball Z clip here.
Oh my god!
Look what you did to my masterpiece. You will rue the day you cross the dark side.
But you'd also know that the Obelisk Blues are pretty stuck up and pompous because of the color that they wear, and this does also apply to some of the female students. Not that we get a lot of dialogue with female students outside the main group or related to them, but it is there. So what I'm getting at is that regardless of skill, girls are automatically put into the best dorm, get the best treatment, and get the status of Obelisk Blue. Meanwhile, the guys, especially the guys who suck at schoolwork or dueling, are stuck eating sardines and living in a shack. Seriously, how hasn't Duel Academy and Seto not been slapped with multiple lawsuits at this point?
Money.
Now, from a practical standpoint, there is a reason why you mostly see blue girls. It's because they probably just didn't want to spend time making extra background female models when it has been determined that the main female cast member was going to be from the blue dorm. Honestly, it kind of reminds me of fanfiction I once read. Yes, I used to read fanfiction. Judge me all you want, let's keep going. I remember that there was an Osiris Red student that went around beating a ton of Obelisk Blue girls. Not because he was sexist, but to show the inherent sexism that had been putting in female students in Obelisk Blue when they may not necessarily have the prerequisite skills to go there. Makes a lot of sense to me, really. What does it say about the standards of the academy if they're willing to promote students who don't really fit the standards for their best dorm or even allow them to graduate to the top of their class? If this slifer slacker can beat so many so-called top dorm students, what does it say about the Academy's standards? To be fair, that's also the point of Yuki Judai's character, since he beat a ton of Obelisk Blue characters, but it's this kind of stuff that gets you thinking. Hell, most of the male Obelisk Blues were there because they come from rich families that got to go to prep schools ahead of time. Then again, I'm just wasting my time talking about this. These people aren't really relevant. At least most of them. They're just background characters, but I still thought it was at least interesting to talk about. Then again, I'm digging way too deep into an anime that's about 2 decades old at this point.
I like it, cut G.
Asuka Tenjoin. Probably one of my earlier anime crushes. And it saddens me that I do have to talk about her in a negative light, but alas, there are problems with the writing with her. I do want to say at the beginning that we actually do have a very interesting character beat with Asuka. Her brother was missing, and she was looking to find information about his disappearance. Granted, she didn't do a whole lot of looking, but it was still an interesting character beat, and hey, looking at her solo dueling track record, it's not terrible. 5 wins, 5 losses. I don't count the flashbacks or tag duels for this. So, she's got an average dueling record. Granted, you could also point out some duels we don't actually see and that she has to lose off screen, but whatever. Asuka is portrayed as one of the best female duelists on the island, and considering my complaints with Obelisk Blue, I can actually believe that. However, if you've ever seen the previous video or can read the title, you know for a fact that there's issues with Asuka's character. The first is the character beat I brought up. It only lasts for about the first half of Season 1. Doesn't really get any actual highlights to it, and her brother's found as he is the first of the bad guys called the 7 Stars. And yes, I refer that to the Shadow Riders because it sounds a hell of a lot cooler. And after that, well, Asuka practically becomes the girl of the group. There's not a lot for me to really say about her, and that kind of sucks because, like I said, I like Asuka. Like, there's a real cute moment that sticks out in my mind where she's dressed up as Harpy Lady. And you got her brother, Fubuki, taking a picture of her, and she begins chasing him around trying to get that photo back. And I really like that. That's an extremely lovable and realistic interaction between siblings. It really shows the relationship between the two, and it's actually a pretty nice parallel between the sibling relationship between Sho and Ryo,
Crippling depression.
who have a more stoic and, dare I say, colder sibling relationship. I really wish there was a lot more scenes like this between the two, as it really breaks Asuka out of her more composed character beats. But she essentially doesn't do all that much after her brother is found in Season 1, with the exception of dueling Titan and then dueling Manjomi, who's attempting to court her by stealing the keys that kept 3 demon cards in place. Manjomi, I love you, bro, but you're an idiot! Season 2 doesn't get much better. Honestly, the more important aspects of Asuka's character before the cult of White takes over are... she moves to the Red Dorm because she doesn't want to be a pop idol. Again, this is probably the best thing I like about Asuka as a character. And it has more to do with her brother wanting her to join him being a pop idol duo. We're really shown a more human side of Asuka's character. She's essentially embarrassed by her brother. I don't know why she would. He seems like a really fun guy, and hey, he's got plenty of girls lusting after him.
What the?
I do wish we could have gotten more interactions between the two, because there really isn't a lot more to Asuka's as a character outside of it. There's not any actual development that she goes through. Although, then we get to... the Society of Light. You know, this is probably going ahead too much, but this is something that I've noticed with a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh girls, especially the main leads. If you pay attention, you'll realize there's a trend of them getting mind controlled at one point or another. Anzu was controlled by Merrick, Asuka was brainwashed by Sayo in the Society of Light, Aki has her mind controlled by Divine at one point, Kotere was controlled a few times if I recall, and don't get me started on Arc V. Not yet! I seriously have to wonder if there's one guy who's been a part of the development of all these shows who seems to have a thing for hypnotizing young girls. It's kinda creepy, not gonna lie. And then we get to Season 3.
The one time I forget to pack my bikini.
I've raved about GX in my video about that series and my distaste for Season 3, where the characters that we've had for up to 2.5 years get killed off because there was a surplus of characters. And shock of all shocks, the same applies to Asuka here, and thus her development in Season 4 was extremely rushed, and that in of itself was divided too. One half, you got Asuka being afraid of what she should do with her future, and being afraid that if she takes a teaching job that she'll suck at it. Then again, that's mostly just when she's floating around the dark void. She's seen the universe. The other half, and more prominent line, is her not liking Judai's personality change after Season 3, basically straining her friendship with Judai. I mean, when you think that one of your friends dragged your injured brother into a duel that actively hurts him, then yeah, that is kind of an issue. And yes, nitpickers, I am aware that Fubuki is the one who wanted a duel, but that's beside the point. During Season 4, it was clear that Asuka was nostalgic for the previous years, and with Judai changing, it really shows then when they tag duel, with Judai basically just using her cards, and in turn just using her. Symbolically, it's really good, but I don't know, there's something that really gets under my skin with this. Maybe it's because Asuka is discounting the sheer hell that Judai went through in Season 3 that ranges from people being erased. Yes, Viper was killed, seeing his friends essentially die before his eyes, becoming an evil king that enacted genocide, and fusing with Yubel, a living ball of angst that I'm not even sure I should include in this video because I'm not sure if they're a guy or a girl somewhere in between. I would think that if someone wouldn't change from dealing with that stuff, that they are a designated psychopath. My point is, Asuka, you've got a taste of what Judai had to deal with. Trauma like that doesn't disappear and it can change a person drastically. And sometimes it's for the very worst. To be clear, Yugioh GX is a lot different from the Duel Monsters counterpart, for a number of reasons. Initially, there wasn't a manga counterpart that the writers could pull from, and since Takahashi was probably swimming in dough because of how popular the card game was, they couldn't turn to his work, even though he did actually work on it in some degree. Fun fact, he does have a small role in some of the manga adaptations of Yu-Gi-Oh! Granted that it has its own problems, but I like the GX manga. A lot, really. I kind of prefer it over the anime, but we're not here to talk about the manga, we're here to talk about the girls of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. And now, we get to the other one.
Alright, I think she gets the point. She's about to get jazzed.
I hope they cancel this show.
Sorry, I was talking about something meaningless when we should have been talking about Rei, who is also meaningless. Again, I expressed very deeply about why I dislike Rei as a character in GX when I made my original video. Not only for the fact that she's basically a useless character outside of being a damsel in distress in the 3rd season, which, fun fact, she doesn't even accompany the rest of the group into the other worlds when they leave. She basically adds nothing to the story outside of that. You could remove her from the plot and you basically wouldn't lose much. Not helped is the fact that this character design is supposed to be that of an 11-year-old.
13.
Meanwhile, in English dub, she's apparently started off 8.5, so she's barely 10. Ugh, what kind of crack were they smoking with this kind of decision at 4 kids? Thing is, Rei started off as a pretty inoffensive character. She had a crush on Ryo Marufuji, the guy who apparently is allowed to shower on screen, and then snuck into Duel Academy disguised as a boy in order to get close to him. That's a neat beat for a character, and very interesting considering the lengths she was willing to go. And hey, for what is essentially a one-off filler episode, it wasn't bad. The problem was they really didn't do a whole lot with her when she came back, with the exception of the aforementioned damsel in distress and having a connection to a depressive guy named Martin, who acts as a meat puppet for Yubel, the main antagonist of Season 3 that I brought up earlier, which, I mean, I can understand why Martin is depressed. Imagine if you're the son of this melted blob of French pastries. I'd be depressed if I knew I had that guy's genes inside me too. Back to Rei for some reason, she gets promoted to Obelisk Blue. Well, ain't that just peachy? I think what my biggest issue with Rei is the same issue I got with GX as a whole. There's just too many characters, and here's the thing, they had other characters who could have filled up the role of another girl in the group. I mean, aside from Junko and Momo, who are basically nothing more than walking, talking statues that act like Asuka's friends, and in the dub, they're nothing more than the typical Valley girls, they could have, I don't know, actually given a personality outside of wanting to like boys and being a cheer squad. Or if you didn't want to do that, there were a few other one-shot female duelists who could have made up for a much more interesting inclusion into the main cast, like Alice, who's essentially a haunted doll that came to life to punish duelists that treated weak cards like trash. I mean, she certainly is a lot more interesting of a character via the premise alone than Rei is. Granted, I'm just a YouTuber with my big dumb YouTuber brain. I can only speculate on how things could have been done 20 years ago in an anime about card games. So this is mostly just a waste of time, much like my life.
The one I crave is coming.
Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 worst movie accents.
Before I start unpacking the thing that is Yubel, I want to point out that there really aren't a lot of female villains in Yugioh GX. In the first season, you had the vampire Camula. I do love me a good bath scene. Aside from some, I guess, passable fan service, Camula was actually a pretty competent antagonist. She actively sat on her bats to survey the duelists to learn about their decks. She was actually pretty competent in dueling and even had her own little win streak. Yeah, she used a broken card that would have stolen the soul of anyone she wanted, but she's still a bad guy, and it's expected that she'd pull some stunt like that. Hell, Camula only loses to Judai because he managed to pull a brand new hero that she didn't see. And then she got her own soul sucked out because of the shadow charm that Judai just happened to have. You know, now that I think about it, the students that did beat the 7 stars took the shadow charms, but we never actually got to see what happened to those mythical items that can turn people into dolls, bring back the dead, and can turn tigers into muscle-bound ladies. Wait, what? Oh yeah, Tanya. I'm of two minds with Tanya. On one hand, she's a muscular Amazon gal who can kick my ass, but on the other hand, she's actually a tiger. Yeah, she's not a bad villain per se, but in comparison to Camula, she's not as prominent, even when she does beat Misawa. Fun fact, later in the season, we see Misawa dressed up as Amazona's tiger. God, Misawa, you are such a simp!
No, she would never, not my Tanya.
Also, fun side fact, in the manga adaptation of GX, Misawa actually has a crush on Asuka, to the point where he is actually jealous that Judai has Asuka's phone number and email address. I really need to make a serious talk about how to fix some characters, but back on topic, there's also Mizuchi, the younger sister of Sayo, the main antagonist of Season 2 Society of Light. Again, this is a character that doesn't get too much screen time, so it's hard for me to really talk about her character. We're first shown that she's cold and calculating, willing to punish her subordinates, even when they actually manage to succeed. She tests both Judai and Edo to see if they can help her brother be freed from the gestalt horror that is the Light of Destruction, and after she gets digitized into the cyber world, she's somehow uploaded into the satellite that would be used to fire lasers to brainwash the world, and said satellite was destroyed by...
Jesus Christ, what the fuck?
A spiritual T-Rex version of Hasselberry and the Guyver hero Neos. I love this batshittery. But I really don't have an issue with Mizuchi, at least not until Season 4, where she's captured by the World of Darkness and used to force Sayo to fight Judai in a duel to the death, with bombs placed inside Kaiba Corporation. I mean, she's just basically used as a tool for this, but again, we don't spend a lot of time with her, so I don't know what to say about her. Nor do I have an issue with her.
You summon regenerating rose in attack mode. It's beautiful, but it's got thorns.
By thorns, do you mean 0 attack point?
Yeah, no shit, Sherlock!
Okay, we get to the clusterfuck that is Yubel. How is Yubel a clusterfuck? Let's start with the fact I don't even know if they're a full-on girl. I mean, look at this! You got a combination of both masculine and feminine traits with Yubel's body. Even if you go back to their backstory, I can't tell if they're a guy or a girl. I assume guy, but that's really stretching it. Honestly, Yubel is a topic that should warrant their own video because there's a lot to dissect about this character. Like talking about they represent the alchemy and fusion themes of the series, or how I think Yubel is super creepy and obsessive, which, while bad without context, as a villain is a great angle. Not to mention, Yubel does the job really well messing with the main cast, basically making Judai break and is a pretty good duelist. I may make a video talking more about Yubel, but I think what makes me dislike Yubel isn't because of her character, but because of how the concept of her really makes the story of the anime even more batshit insane than I think even I can handle. Like in Season 3, not only is Yubel capable of possessing people, kills people, made Johan and Judai shippers more and more fuel for their shipping. Oh, and apparently, this makes Judai the descendant of an ancient king long-ass time ago. You know, while I can appreciate the idea of lore like this, GX made fun of this concept in the first season.
Think we were somehow connected to each other in some ancient life, Jaden? You know, like you were an Egyptian pharaoh and I was the guardian Seto? No offense, but that's just lame.
I agree with Dub Judai, that is just lame. I get that GX is balls to the wall insane with concepts, as many people in the comments section of my video told me, but apparently missed that I actually like that. But a lot of this stems from something that I'm still searching for, so take what I say next with a grain of salt. Since from what I understand, the Supreme King plotline along with Yubel was to fill a problem with Judai's character. Namely because with Judai's happy-go-lucky character who basically won every fight he was in, there wasn't a place for his character to go, so Yubel was created to bring out the dark and desperate side of Judai's character. It was to show what would happen if Judai continued to bring his friends with him into dangerous situations and lost, because according to an interview with Kazuki Takahashi in the Dual Art book, Judai's attitude was difficult to show growth in, and stated that his personality would not be enough to beat someone like Yami Merrick. Granted, I disagree with this notion. For one thing, I can't actually confirm if this quote is something that Takahashi actually said. I'm not shelling $18,000 for this. And frankly, I don't trust a lot of websites that are allowing the downloads of this product, nor do I speak Japanese to confirm this. Another thing, not only has Judai actually lost in the past, like to Kaiser and Edo, he's actually seen what's happened to people when they lose serious duels, and has been in duels where they have been completely serious, his duel against Camula being a prime example of this. Thirdly, it wasn't until Season 3 that Judai actually dragged anyone into danger with him. I get that it was a plot point that people would go after Judai, but if that was the case, you really didn't need Yubel to push that or make an overly complicated plot to have Judai wake up to serious nature of dueling in the world of Yu-Gi-Oh! He'd already been experiencing that, even as soon as episode 4 of the series. Judai didn't think every duel was fun. His friends were put in danger multiple times, whether it was because of some goon who was hired by a teacher to get him out of the academy, his friends being held hostage over lava, or his friends being turned into dolls. Hell, I'd even say that his happy-go-lucky attitude being a detriment to his character is bullshit. And to say why, I'm gonna bring up a quote from Ace Attorney. A lawyer is someone who smiles no matter how bad it gets. No, Judai isn't a lawyer, although it will be fun to see courtrooms dueling. But the same principle applies here. No matter how terrible a situation is, a positive attitude can help people get through dark times. And the way this quote is being made, it seems like the only way to beat someone like Yami Merrick was through pure seriousness.
If I look past the fact that he's just like really cool and edgy,
I don't agree with that. Smiling in the face of adversity is actually a pretty admirable trait. And the way this quote and information I found says this, it's made out to be like Judai was ignorant of his actions and consequences. Judai is an idiot, yes! But he's not ignorant of the consequences of duels he may lose, and he certainly didn't treat every duel he was in as a simple game. Then again, I can't prove if this is something that was actually said, so I don't know. I'm just complaining for the sake of complaining. Give me money! Getting back to Yubel, if this really was the reason for Yubel's inclusion, then I have to say I don't agree with that notion at all. Granted, that being said, I do appreciate that Yubel as a character can be an interesting case. Showing the mentality of, I hurt people I love because it's the only way I know how to show affection. That's messed up, it's deep stuff, and it's interesting to watch. Regardless of my issues I have with Yubel, and this video won't be able to do it justice since my thoughts are more complicated than, this character is bad, or this character is good. And that's just talking about the Japanese sub version. The dub version is another beast entirely. So if you guys want to see a video dedicated to Yubel, and as a litmus test, comment, come play with me, Jaden, down below.
Are we cringing yet?
On a side note, I really hate the dubbed version of this scene. Like, do you really need Yubel to glow purple here?
Yes.
Really? Honestly, in my humble opinion, the girls of GX, well, Asuka really, got off a bit better than in the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Granted, there wasn't anything overly terrible about them, save for Rei's age, but by that same token, there's not a lot that makes them stand out either. Then again, this goes to the core of GX's problems, where only Judai is the one who's capable of saving the day. Sure, some of the other characters get their wins, but a lot of the time the duels tend to be inconsequential to the main story of the series. But hey, after this, we're now shifting into Turbo next time, and talking about my second favorite series of Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, and their girls. And how they took probably one of the best, most interesting female characters and replaced her with one of the blandest generic characters of all time. Fuck you, Crow! I'm MangaKamen, thanks for watching and have a nice day!